Since the Brexit result was announced on Friday, there has been a 57% increase in racial insults and hate crimes reported on a national police hotline. David Cameron, the Prime Minister, has condemned these reports and said the following in Parliament today. He said, "In the past few days, we have seen despicable graffiti daubed on a Polish community centre. We've seen verbal abuse hurled against individuals because they are members of ethnic minorities. Let's remember, these people have come here and made a wonderful contribution to our country. We will not stand for hate crime or these kinds of attacks. They must be stamped out." There are reports of graffiti being daubed on a Polish community centre in Hammersmith, a whole slew of reports on social media, people saying that people just coming up to them in the streets and saying, "Go home. We've voted leave. Now it's time for you guys to leave." The overriding sentiment is of this rising permissiveness, a legitimization of a xenophobic undercurrent because of the leave vote. People just feel a legitimization and an ability to go up to strangers in the streets and start hurling abuse at them, whether they're from the EU or not. And it is highly troubling. As I said, it's a 57% increase in reported such hate crimes and abuse. There's not necessarily any violence that's been associated with it, but people are saying it feels like 1980s in England again.
Wow, they obviously feel they have the right now to do this. They feel like, but obviously this hatred and these sort of thoughts have been, endemic amongst these people, but now they feel that they have the right to go out and say these kinds of things. I do want to say, though, that frequently after major events, attacks, things like this, there seems to be an initial increase in violence like this, in hate crime, and it does usually flatten out after. But obviously this is a very different case because we are waiting to see whether certain people will be asked to leave the United Kingdom or not and how this whole thing will play out. But yeah, at the moment it might be in line with trends of other major events, but obviously this one.
Yeah, you raise a good point. And the point is this, is that after any types of events, such as the Joe indicated, if there's a terrorist attack, there is normally a spike, a corresponding spike in anti-immigrant offensive commentary and hate crime reported. And then it's a spike and then it flattens out. So at this point, we just don't know. It's too early. A specific number of reported instances is 85. So it's not huge compared with 54 from the preceding year of the same period. So I don't want to suggest that it's out of control, but there is a notable increase, and the police are reporting that it's definitely linked to the Brexit decision.
Right, it's not linked to any sort of terrorism, and I think it speaks to, I don't want to say lack of intelligence, but the lack of being informed on the part of a lot of people, because they believe this means, well, we voted to leave and now you have to leave, or they think it means, well, people who have come from the EU to work and aren't citizens have to leave now. This is all just being misinformed.
It's English hooliganism again. We see it at the football tournaments. We see it now in the streets. It's people taking what they believe is their power and sort of just basically acting like criminals, like hooligans.
It's two things, and you're right. It's the lack of informative understanding. It was the campaign itself was highly vitriolic and was very much centred on, we are going to claim back our independence. You saw Nigel Farage speak about it. You saw Boris Johnson speak about it, as though we didn't have independence to begin with. We're going to reclaim our borders, and people have misunderstood that, and then it has been somehow siphoned into this slew of distasteful, toxic views. We can just skip to the quote from Boris Johnson, who tried to quell the confusion over this over the weekend with regards to the status of people who are in the EU and with regards to people who are British, who are living outside the borders. This is what he said. He said, "I've seen a lot of confusion over the weekend about the status of people living in this country. It's absolutely clear that people from other European Union countries who are living here have their rights protected. All that people want to see is a system that's fair, impartial and humane to all people coming from around the world. And also, obviously, people from the UK living abroad, living in the rest of the EU, will also have their rights completely protected. I just worry there's been a certain amount of confusion in the media over the last 24 hours.
Well, that's something that's going to take some negotiation, because really, are they expecting that everybody's just going to get grandfathered in? That people, they have to work these things out.
Correct. It is all subject to negotiation, but to pick up back on what Joe was saying is the fact that and also yourself, what the problem is that, as I said, there was so much misinformation, there was so much acrimony, and there was so much focus on immigration and taking back borders that people have completely misunderstood the position. And not only that, But the position was they were lied to, and they were misinformed, because at no point they're reneging on any sense of that immigration, curtailing immigration. The reality is that net immigration from the EU is lower than immigration from outside the EU on a year-by-year basis. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the Leave campaigners are now reneging on any sense of promise that they're going to curtail immigration. They said, no, we didn't really mean that. What we said was we're going to control it. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're going to get control back. Are you going to reduce? Are you going to reduce net immigration into this country? And they cannot give that assurance because they are unable to do so. And it would be highly detrimental to the economy if they were to do so. The other ridiculous thing, which the Leave campaign always forgot to mention, is that immigrants and EU immigrants are a net contributor to Her Majesty's government. They pay £2.5 billion in income tax, more than they take out in terms of benefits. And this whole thing about benefits, and they come here and they take our benefits. And the other last thing to think about is it's going back to what the racists think is, and the typical thing is, and it's why the Polish cultural centre was attacked, is the typical thing is, it's the Polish worker that comes in and he's a plumber, and that is no longer the case. It's more like the more typical immigrant from the EU is someone who's, apparently the archetypal immigrant is someone who's either French or Spanish who works in technology. So the whole thing about the Polish plumber is 10 years, 15 years out of date. So again, it's just a combination of misinformation, ignorance, fear-baiting, lies that's now created this sense and legitimization that they feel as though somehow leave means go, you go.
This also is a prescient reminder, or this is something that we need to look out for in the case that there is a Trump presidency. A similar thing might happen here. We've seen it already in the wake of his rallies. But if he were to be elected here, we might see some similar behavior.
I 100% agree, and you need to take note. It is the politics of discontent. The politics of discontent that was at work here that really drove, and it was discontent with the established order, discontent with the elites, although Boris Johnson is just as elite as David Cameron, and I'm just as part of the establishment. He went to Eton, went to Oxford, all of those things. He's part of the political establishment, and has been for years. So why he's seen as this foppish, congenial type of individual, it escapes me, but he is. And it is the politics of discontent that led to this disastrous decision. And mark my words, it's the same politics of discontent, if you don't heed the warning, that could potentially lead to a Trump presidency.